ผู้ข่าวค่ะ if you are live please let me know ขอบอกพี่ด้วยนะคะถ้า live แล้ว okay good afternoon everyone good afternoon everyone in Asia and good morning Sora in England and now she is actually in Edinburgh for joining us this special series on romantic relationship and attachment among Thai and Taiwanese adults. And my name is Nipat Pichayayotin. I am the faculty member in psychology department in Chulalongkorn University in developmental psychology. And it was such an honor that in the past couple years, I have been involving in such a great project of romantic relationship and attachment among Thai and Taiwanese adults with two wonderful ladies that I'm going to introduce here. I have Jill and also Sor, which they are going to kind of give a little bit about who they are. So how about starting with you, Jill? Could you please tell the audience who you are and your work and your research in general?
Sure. Thank you so much, Neet. So I just want to say first that my internet is not very stable. So I apologize if you see that I'm, frozen. So I will try to catch up as soon as I can. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this series. So for me, I'm originally from Thailand, and I'm actually the CU alumnus. So I'm so glad to be able to take part in this. And I'm a licensed clinical psychologist in the US. Currently, I'm a faculty member at Fulbright University Vietnam and responsible for developing the psychology curriculum for the undergraduate studies. And also a clinical supervisor for the university's wellness center. My research interests are around trauma and resilience and in several aspects. Also, especially among marginalized groups in society, and also in the international and cross-cultural contexts. Thank you.
Wonderful. Sor, could you please also let us know a little bit about you?
Hello, everyone. Hi from England, or actually from Scotland. I am now visiting Edinburgh at the moment. So good afternoon, everyone, and good morning or good evening, wherever you're joining us today. My name is Ching-Yu Huang. I got my PhD from Cambridge University in social and developmental psychology, and now I am a faculty member of psychology in Keele University in the UK. I know many of you probably have not heard about Keele University. It is a university that actually has quite a bit of history, and it's sitting in the middle of England, and it's very beautiful. It has one of the largest campus in the UK, and it has a really beautiful campus, and we have really vibrant psychology department here doing a lot of research. And my research is about parent-child relationship across different cultures and how immigration can affect this parent-child relationship. And another hat I wear is a forensic psychologist. So I work with children and work with families in family or criminal cases, especially when children are involved as witnesses. So how do we interview children to get the best evidence out of them? So this is another branch of my work. So I have been living in the UK for about total of 10 years now. And I met Jill when I was in San Diego in Alliance International University, where she was formerly a faculty member there, and I was doing my postdoctoral research, and that's how we met, and that's how this project came about. So I'm really excited to be here to share with you about our project, and I'll welcome any questions from you. Thank you.
Awesome. So for today, I think everything here should be very casual. So if anyone from Facebook Live at Psychology CU and also anyone in the Zoom link here would like to make conversation or asking any quick question or any clarification, so please feel free to let us know. For those who leave the comments in the Facebook Live, we will have people send the question to us. So please make it very conversational and make this discussion about romantic relationship and attachment more fun for everyone here. So like I said, we met through Jill, and she is the one who linked me to join this project. And but it's the idea of intergenerational attachment that really sparks my interest, and that makes me join this part of the research. So for the talk today, we are going to introduce you about the attachment and intergenerational attachment, and the aspect that we look at for our project here is in culture and gender differences in these aspects. And we are going to give you the findings of what we found, and also give us a little bit about our thoughts on the results. Okay, so Sor, I think we're now going to discuss about relationships. So it's about all the quality and attachment. So could you please tell us a little bit about why you start thinking about the intergenerational attachment? But let's say before we go to that, it's all about relationship satisfaction, right? So if the person has all the other quality you desired, would you marry this person if you are not in love with him or her? So,
well, I can start to discuss this anyway. So, well, we know intimate relationship is so important to us, right? If you are married or if you are currently in a relationship, you know how much it would affect your life satisfaction, your happiness, your sense of who you are even. So if we ask this question to the audience, if a person has all the other qualities that you desire, would you marry this person if you are not in love with him or her? Well, just think about it for yourself. I don't know. Can we raise our hands here with Zoom or do some kind of interaction? If so, just think about this question. Would you marry this person if he or she has all the quality you want, but you're not in love? Would you marry this person? Well, if you ask this question to a Thai audience, I don't know what's our response in our audience at the moment. Well, there's a lot of culture differences here. In India, Pakistan, about 50% would say yes, and 25% undecided. And in a white kind of European and individualist culture, America, Britain, Australia, or Latin America, 80% would say no. Only less than 5% would say yes. But if you think about this in a timeline, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, if you ask this kind of question, only about 65% of men and 24% of women would say no. So what we think about marriage, what we think about romantic relationship, especially when you move that forward into marriage, it's very, very different from time to time. Next slide, please. So that's why we need to discuss how this come about. What really affect our satisfaction and our happiness in a romantic relationship. And there are many different factors that can affect marital satisfaction in, one of the most important is actually romantic attachment. So childhood attachment, how you attach to your caregivers, that attachment, that kind of bond, that kind of trust and interaction act as a blueprint for you to interact with the rest of the world. And that's how you learn your first prototype of interacting with the people around you. And so that's why we want to talk about the attachment. And there are other qualities like cultural differences definitely act as a factor. That's why we want to discuss and compare two different cultures. Even Thai and Taiwanese culture are generally considered quite collectivist and quite East Asian kind of culture. But well, are they really the same? Can we treat them the same? And it's really important for us to find out. And how do we discuss important issues and how do we disclose issues about ourselves to our partner? That also is a very different, it's conceived very differently in different culture. So these kind of interaction and personal disclosure are very, very important in understanding romantic attachment and relationships. So next slide, please. Thank you. Yeah, so in attachment and romantic relationship or marriage, a lot of research has found that, the attachment theory, if you are all psychologists in the audience, you will know what attachment is. But basically, attachment is, if we boil it down to the conceptual issue, it is about how we relate to people around us, especially the close people that we are really committed to, and we see ourselves not separating from them. And there's two aspects. There's one is about attachment anxiety, which is a fear of rejection and abandonment. And you want to be close to the person that you love all the time. So if you have this kind of quality, then we say that your attachment and anxiety, you are more anxiously attached to your partner. And there's also attachment avoidance. So avoidant attachment, if you have an avoidant attachment type, then you're more likely to be more uncomfortable when it's too close, and you want to have space and you want to maintain some kind of emotional distance. And of course, there's the secure attachment. So if you are securely attached to your partner, you tend to have higher relationship satisfaction because you are okay and you want to be close to your partner. And so insecure, meaning the anxious or avoidant attachment type, usually have a strong dependence and unhealthy desire to demand for intimacy. And that can actually ended up pushing your partner away. So these different attachment types will have different relationship satisfaction. Next slide, please. And past research has found that there is a strong association between how your attachment in the childhood is predictive of your attachment type to your close partner. And there's another concept called the intergenerational attachment, which is how your parents are attached to each other. That is likely to affect how you and your current partner attach to each other. Well, if we think about this from a kind of a social psychology observational learning point of view, that makes sense, right? Because that you see how your parents interact with each other, and that's how you kind of learn how intimate partners relate and interact with each other. So there is research evidence showing that there's a connection between how your parents attach to each other and how you would attach to your current partner. And from some research about divorce and between divorce and non-divorce households, they found that adult children of divorced parents, they tend to have the parents' marital discord and the conflict in the divorce and the kind of resentment between the parents would adversely affect the offspring's own marital relationship, and more likely that they would have negative beliefs about romantic relationship, and that is learned from the family of their origin. The next point. And the adults from intact family, so parents who did not divorce, they are more likely to have secure romantic attachment, and they are having higher trust and relationship satisfaction with your partner. So they are more likely to report that their family of origin shows them how marriage can be enduring and satisfying, and the external pressures can create pressures. Yeah, so this is how we learn the kind of prototype of relationship from observing our parents. Next point. And parent-child attachment and romantic attachment in childhood is an intergenerational mediating variable between how parental marital satisfaction and the adult children's own marital satisfaction. So the husbands and but husbands are affected a little more than the wives in this aspect. So these are what we have found in the past research literature. But of course, that is not the only thing we want to look at. And we want to also look at how gender and how culture play a role. So I'll pass it over to Jill now.
Thank you, Sor. So, can you go back that slide, please? Okay. So, I'd like to build from what Sor has said, that, I think that the basic ground of our research is really in the understanding that romantic or intimate relationship is fundamental to humans' growth and health, mental well-being. And there's a strong line of research on the role of attachment. So whether it is childhood attachment, like what Sora explained, as a blueprint for how we attach to others as adults, but also how we perceive our parents' relationship to be like. We learn a lot from watching them, right? Watching our primary caregivers interact with each other. And so that's why we picked up this line of research and trying to understand it from now, also from cross-cultural perspectives. Because we are cultural beings, and there are certain cultural norms or cultural scripts that we are all immersed in and being exposed to for, and anything we do, anything we think we should do, right? All the way from individual actions, but also to how we relate to others, and also how if we talk about it in the context of intimate relationship, then these kind of norms may also affect how we seek partners, right? How we expect our relationship to be like, how we are, or who we can depend on, or who we want to depend on us, who we can trust, and also how to solve problems or conflicts. So all these, are kind of within what we would call, the cultural factors that are affecting all of these relational behaviors. And so we like to also look at that in addition to intergenerational transmission of relationship style. We want to also see how it plays out in different cultural contexts. Another point I want to make is kind of also building from what Sora has said. So different types of attachment, right, or theories of attachment have been heavily studied in the Western cultures, right? And different types like avoidance or anxious. but also, what does it look like when we use that in other cultures? So the literature also has suggested that there might be some different nuances in that. For example, the types might not look the same. Perhaps behavior that is perceived as avoidance in certain culture may be perceived as pretty normal in another culture. So that's why it is very important to actually look at these concepts from the ground up and to understand how they play out. Okay.
All right. So I think that, we now can have some comments from the audience to maybe, because I think Sora gave us a good point of how we started the study of, to compare the data from Taiwanese and from Thai. So I wonder, would you please, all of the audience here and also on Facebook, could you please, in Zoom, could you please leave a chat and give us a guess of whether we found the same results among Thai couples compared to the Taiwanese couple in terms of the how the attachment avoidance and attachment anxiety relates to marital satisfaction. Would you please vote in your chat saying whether it is the same across two cultures or it's different across two cultures? Just type in same or different. I would like to see how many in this audience tally out how they would agree that two culture that we perceive as collectivism cultures to be either the same or different. So we start having the votes. So in our literature review, it seems like we found mixed findings, like either the same or different findings in like higher or lower in some sample and higher satisfaction, relationship of satisfaction and different types of attachment in different culture. But, we still want to see whether you think, Thai and Taiwanese are either the same or different in terms of satisfaction and attachment. So let me look at the chat. So we have pure guess. Okay, so let me count the same one. One. We have more different. Two. Okay, of many people guess that it would be different results. So we will see. Okay, so with our data collection from the Thai side, I managed to collect the data of the husband and wives of 100 pairs of husband and wife. So their age is about 23 to 69, and the mean age is about 46 for wives and 44 for husbands. And so their age is a little higher. The mean age for Thai participants is a little higher, and the education for Thai participants are a little higher as well. So we have more of the postgraduate level, which is like a master and doctoral degree for 60%. But proportionally, we have college equivalent group of participants across two cultures. And in terms of employment are pretty much comparable. But let me put the note out here that we have a little older participants group in Thailand and also a little higher in education. Sor, would you like to join in and share us a little bit about your Taiwanese sample?
Yeah, sure. So I collected 73 pairs of married couple in Taiwan. And just to clarify, we talk about heterosexual marriage couples here because same-sex marriage was not legalized in Taiwan when we collected the data. I think our data was collected in 2016. Between late 2016 to early 2017. So I recruited these participants from a mixture of online forums about where people talk about their marriage issues and how do they resolve relationship conflicts, and also personal connection. And I am still working with National Taiwan University. So I use their kind of mailing list to help recruit participants. So as you can see, the age range for the Taiwanese couple is slightly, the upper limit is slightly lower than the Thai couple. And the mean age is also a bit younger than the Thai couple. And educational background, well, you can see they're mostly college or university equivalent degree. And employment, we can see that it's mostly about half of them at least are employed for wages. That means that they have a stable job. And they also, some of them are self-employed, and some of them are homemaker, and some of them, not many, retired. Yeah, so this is how our sample looked like in Taiwan.
Okay, so and the method that we use is the Peary self-report. So, and you might wonder how we measure parent perceived romantic attachment. So we actually use the same measure of their own romantic attachment questions, but in our instruction, we ask them to think about their experience of perceiving their parents' attachment. So it's pure retrospective of remembering or of evaluation of their own experience of seeing their parents in their relationship. And also we have the questions about their marital satisfaction. So that's how we collect the data and the questionnaire that we use. Okay, so the key findings that we found is that romantic attachment anxiety negatively associated with marital satisfaction in the Taiwanese couple, but in the Thai couple, neither romantic attachment anxiety or avoidance was associated with marital satisfaction. So, we can looking just, with the correlation table here, and you can see that only the Taiwanese couple would significantly find the relationship between marital satisfaction and the anxiety. So Sor and Ju, would you like to have any speculation of what is going on or why we have the results this way? Not only found in Taiwanese couple, but not in Thai couple.
Well, I can comment a little bit on the Taiwanese bit, because I think Taiwanese relationship style is very kind of highly interdependent. That is considered like a close relationship that how husband and wives or boyfriend, girlfriend should be really seeing each other as the most important, and they should be together all the time. So there is a strong kind of anxiety in being abandoned and not being the most important person in the other person's life. So that's why the anxiety in the attachment is so important here. If they are afraid of being abandoned and being neglected by their partner, that of course is going to be strongly affected their marital satisfaction negatively, as you can see here from the correlational table. And also, I think this effect is stronger for the husbands compared to wives. in a Taiwanese couple. That's another side note of our finding. And I think there is a strong gender effect in the Taiwanese society, especially because recently in Taiwan, well, I would say recently, it's been going on for 20 years at least, the kind of gender equality movement in Taiwan. So like women are starting to take more not dominance, but they are becoming more independent, financially independent as well as emotionally independent, and they are even more educated than guys a lot in Taiwan now. So women are becoming a lot more independent. So they are less afraid of losing the relationship. And women, especially if they are still working, they are not afraid to leave an unhappy marriage. Whereas husbands, they depend a lot on the kind of emotional side of the marriage. And so I think that's why there is this kind of strong gender effect in the Taiwanese couple. Yeah. Jill, would you like to comment on the Thai part?
Sure. For the Thai couples, I think we were somewhat surprised, by the non-significant results because it is not consistent with the literature that suggested that either attachment anxiety or attachment avoidance would actually negatively affect romantic relationship satisfaction. But here we probably can only speculate what's going on. I think that our Thai couples are generally, not significantly, but slightly had a longer years in marriage, right? A little bit longer than the Taiwanese couples for the Thai sample for this one. And so that might have an effect in some way, the longevity of the marriage, that may, have other factors that are at play that we were not controlled for, that might help, with the marital satisfaction. So there are probably other factors surrounding marital satisfaction that, for example, the couple's own coping strategies, or other, social, cultural support system. So all of this kind of that we did not account for that might have had, have played a role. One thing though, in terms of the avoidance that I think I find it interesting because it was not found to be significant association with satisfaction in marriage in neither Taiwanese or Thai. So this is kind of like very not consistent with the literature. And that I think that we could kind of see this as perhaps a cultural variance in the concept of anxious attachment and avoidant attachment. So avoidant attachment may have some really different nuances in the culture in these two cultures compared to other cultures in the literature. So is that what? Yeah, we were talking about that, Sora. That probably the collectivistic approach of Thai and Taiwanese cultures may actually have an impact on how people perceive whether or not they want to approach conflicts directly. Right? So if if there's a marital discord or marital conflict, perhaps the best way is not to confront it, in the culture. The best way is actually to avoid conflict. So maybe avoidance is an adaptive coping style that is not seen as maladaptive or problematic, at least for this moment in time. So we don't know the longevity of it or the longitudinal aspect of it, but this might be an interesting cultural nuance.
Yeah, I think Jill make a good point on that because in our paper we discussed that in length about the idea of avoidance. In the perception of the Westerner, it seems like a bad coping ways for marriage couples, but for Asian people, to avoid conflicts or to not confront might be the, sometimes it's an adaptive way, like you said, that it's to kind of maintain the harmony in the family, to not giving out like or showing aggressiveness or anger, but it could be the push and pull between the balancing of those things. But it is an interesting to think about, like whether the measurement that we have been using in and that been working in Western culture, it might not be the best fit to Asian or Thai or Taiwanese culture. So we also think about calling for better ways to measure attachment, and also try not to fit in this pattern of avoidance and anxiety. There might be other secure attachment, other definition of secure attachment in specific cultures, and that is what we think is happening here as well. Anything to add on that? All right, so now we are going to the second finding. The key findings that we found is on the cultural and gender differences in attachment. So now we look at the attachment anxiety, so the interaction effect. So Sor, would you like to explain this graph a little bit?
Sure. So here on the graph, you can see the mean score of Taiwanese couples and Thai couples on the right. And the darker, like teal line is the husband's scores. And the light blue line, that's the wife's scores. So you can see here in the Taiwanese couples, the husbands score higher on attachment anxiety compared to their wives. Whereas in Thai couples, you see the wives has slightly higher, but not significantly higher. So a little higher, but not too high difference, a higher attachment anxiety compared to their husband. So there is a kind of a cultural differences in the pattern. There's also gender differences within these cultures. So in Taiwanese culture, husband has higher attachment anxiety. I think I mentioned this earlier about now these days, the gender dynamic in Taiwan is very equal, and women are very empowered in the marriage and in the relationship. They are not afraid to walk out of the relationship. So the husband, probably because of that, they feel a little threatened, and they are afraid that their partner will leave them if they are not happy. So that probably shows in this graph that the husband has higher attachment anxiety compared to their wives, whereas this kind of dynamic is not seen in the Thai couples. So that's why there's this, we call the gender and cultural interaction effect here. The gender differences manifest differently in the two cultures. And I think maybe, perhaps, it's only our speculation, is that, Thai is a very heavily Buddhist based culture. So in Buddhism, there's a lot of focus on everybody managing their own emotion, managing their expectations, and not putting this on their partner. So their emotional state, their happiness is a lot less dependent on the other person. So I think this may be coming into play in even romantic or intimate relationships, the kind of culture and religious teaching. Yeah, and whereas in Taiwan, this kind of religion is much less obvious. And the Western, the American ideal of like romantic love and all of these super romanticizing intimate relationships are quite prevalent. So I think it could be partially affecting that. Maybe you two want to comment a little more on the Thai culture.
Okay.
Meek, go ahead.
Oh, no, you please.
I think that I probably kind of just echo what Sor said. I think that there are probably other factors such as coping abilities, how they perceive conflicts in marriage. And so all these that we did not account for that might, explain some of this kind of differences, and also lower scores on this between Thai and Taiwanese. So yeah, just wanted to echo that.
Actually, I came up with like the maybe another explanation of how we collect the data. So when I collect the data and I said, okay, I need both husband and wife data. So what I did is that if me or my team knew someone who is like who is married or who is in the relationship, I would say, would you also ask your boyfriend or would you also ask your husband to fill in the questionnaire as well? So to begin with, we have the sample bias of, you have a wife who they are in such good relationship enough that they would ask their partner to also fill in the questionnaire. I'm not sure about your sample sort, but for us, it seems like, we have some bias in the way that husband and wife, they probably go along quite well to be included in our study because, they can ask their partner to also doing the same form of questionnaire for the researcher. So we might say that, the reason that we found this, the graph right here, that no big gap of gender differences in Thai sample, it could be because we have a pretty, the couples that is going along pretty well in terms of their healthy relationship and secure attachment style in general.
Well, that is very nice to know in the Thai couples. I think in the Taiwanese couple, I have to say that it is a pain getting a husband to fill out the questionnaire. I lost so many data that I cannot pair them up because the wives filled out the questionnaire, but not the husband. So I think there is a kind of a sampling bias in general. I think women tend to be more open in participating to studies like this, and especially because I didn't manage to get any funding to pay the participants. So it's a completely voluntary work. So I think women tend to be more kind of helpful and wanting to contribute. And so getting their husband to fill out the questionnaire is a pain. And so I'm not quite sure how this can affect the kind of the dynamic in our sample, but I definitely see that it is much harder to get the husband to open up. Perhaps there's a bit of a gender stereotypes about men not wanting to disclose, not talking about things as much. So the kind of masculinity stereotype is still there, despite all these kind of gender equality movement going on in Taiwan. So I think that could be partially contributing to our sample. Yeah.
We have a question from the chat asking about the statistical analysis. We have to say though that we have limitations on statistical analysis, but Sor, could you please tell us in general what analysis that we are using?
So the analysis we use is MANCOVA, so multivariate covariate analysis of covariance. I think we partial out the effect of the educational status. So that's why it's on MANCOVA rather than MANOVA. Otherwise, it would have been a MANOVA. So multivariate analysis multivariate analysis of variance. So we look at the group differences. So group meaning the culture. So we have Thai and Taiwanese culture, that's two groups. And then we also have the gender as another group. So husbands and wife. Yeah, so we look at how the mean differences are in the measures that we look at. So it's Mankova that we use. But we partial out the age. We also partial out age and the education status. Yeah.
Yeah. So to be able to give this, to answer the question about the gender differences, then it's lent us the limitation of not accounting for the pair, the interdependence of data, which we are well aware of that. The best way to deal with the dyad data is to do like an AP model, like, actor partner interaction model, which, if we does that, then we don't have this husband and wife differences. So we have to kind of like trying to like, we know that this way of analysis has some limitation, but this is the way for us to gain the knowledge of the differences between gender. So that is one of our limitation, and also we don't have enough sample size to run the AP model. So that's how, we have some preliminary data to show you today. Okay, so let's move on to the next one, which is also interesting. Sora, could you please tell us a little bit?
Yeah, sure. This is, so the last slide is about attachment anxiety. This slide is about attachment avoidance. So another aspect of attachment. And again, we can see in the Taiwanese sample, the husbands and wives doesn't show gender difference. They both have quite high attachment avoidance. Whereas in the Thai sample, you see the husbands has a higher score in attachment avoidance compared to their wives. And in this attachment avoidance, we have the cultural differences as significant. So you can see here that Taiwanese couples, regardless of their gender, shows higher attachment avoidance compared to the Thai couples. So this is another piece of very interesting findings. So, well, I think in Taiwanese culture, definitely like maintaining the harmony, maintaining the no conflict, and we don't discuss problems. Rather, we actually just kind of suppress or not talk about it. It would just go away. That kind of mentality is there. So I think that kind of manifested in the marital relationship quite a lot. And this is the same for both husbands and wives. Yeah, so I don't know, maybe Jill want to talk a little bit about how this manifests in the Thai couples?
I think one interesting thing is that for this finding is to see that even within two cultures that we would both perceive as collectivistic, but there's still significant difference in this, right? So that kind of speaks to how important it is to really look at nuances in psychological findings among cultures. So even cultures that sometimes we group together as similar with similar cultural patterns, there might be differences within them. So yeah, I think for this, if we see for the wives is slightly higher for husband in the Thai sample. I'm not sure if it's enough to say, but I'm also speculating that perhaps the burden of keeping at peace in the household might be slightly might be a little bit gender based, might be a bit on the female, and to say to keep the family together, to make sure we go along, to make sure we don't get perceived as trouble couples, and we have to keep things in harmony, and there might be some gender bias in that. So the burden might be a little bit on the females. Other than that, I just wanted to point out that there definitely, some kind of underlying, perhaps underlying strategies or coping strategies that couples use, that I think speak to perhaps further research, that we need to kind of look at this, look at other concepts more, but also look at the longitudinal, right? How this might pan out over time, perhaps at this point in time for these couples might look very different in 5 years, or might actually have looked different 5 years ago, depending on the life events that happen in their lives. So that's kind of something to think ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so that's all we have for our results. So now I'm going to ask you the question for Jill and Sor, for what do you think, because we collected data, it was the first year after I finished my PhD training from the US, a first year working actually. So it's been a while. So we collected data on 2016, 2017, and it's been now 2021, considering, and also COVID-19 time for the past 1.5 years almost. So what do you think the results would go the same or differently in terms of, it doesn't have to kind of relate it to this results or this particular study, but what do you think the marriage couple or marriage relationship based on your current work and also your clinical work, how would that, marital relationship within this COVID-19 time would go the same or different before and after COVID? What do you guys think?
Well, I think just speculation. Of course, I do not have data yet, but I have another project now is looking at family relationships, especially for married couples who have children, school-aged children, and how do they deal with COVID, and how does COVID pandemic affect their marital satisfaction as well as their parenting practice. But I haven't looked at the data enough yet to give you an idea. But because this is a big project that we collaborate with 10 different countries, and just looking at every month we meet, and then we will kind of report back what we have found in this month and what's the situation. And it seems like COVID is actually pulling the gender dynamic back into the more traditional one. Like within the impact of COVID, the kind of traditional gender role, the mother take on most of the housework, despite the mother is actually also working full time. They are still taking a lot more emotional labor in the household. They are also taking a lot more house chores compared to their husbands. So I think within the COVID context, women's satisfaction is probably going to be affected negatively more compared to husbands, because husbands are kind of given the privilege of focusing on their career, and they don't have to contribute too much, or they don't have to worry too much about things at home. So even the wives, they are full-time employees, and they are somehow kind of given the burden of house chores. And this was not just manifested in Asian cultures. It's across different cultures, US, UK, Russia, Sweden even. So like even Sweden, such a progressive country that we think about as like a gender equal and very progressive, even under such circumstances, this traditional gender role get actually enhanced. So that's our kind of finding for in the COVID pandemic, and I think this probably would be this similar thing in Thai or in Taiwanese context now. Yeah. So.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Jill? Any findings?
No, not yet. I'm actually way behind on SOAR in terms of collecting that data, but we are also collecting the data in Vietnam. So similar data to look at the impacts of COVID-19 on families, family relations. So I'm excited to know how that would pan out. But for me, I feel like a lot of the concepts around relationships are probably being challenged and being challenged not in a negative way necessarily, but being looked at, reconceptualized in many ways due to the pandemic. Right? So like what SOAR had said, gender roles, or also just the egalitarian way of relating to each other, that would have to be re-looked at and reconceptualized, and also a sense of appreciation, right, between the couples, and also and conflict resolution. So in many ways, this is a new normal of relationships, right? Kind of, perhaps in some ways, it could be in a positive way where, we have the same enemy, COVID, that we have to come together to fight through this, and that might increase the bonding in some way. But of course, in another way, it could actually add to the stress in the family. And when we have high stress, high crisis, then that we, a lot of the different coping strategies get activated, both maladaptive and adaptive. So, and if you add the factor of having children, young children or adult children, that, could add to the mix in a very interesting way. So a lot of, adult children had to move home, right, because of the COVID. And from not having lived together for a long time now, having to, again, renegotiate the relationship in a way that, they didn't have much choice. So I think that these are very interesting dynamics that are worth looking at.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I collected the COVID relationship data with the other researcher internationally as well. And the first batch of analysis that we found was that the relationship commitment does not translate it strongly and directly to relationship satisfaction, which is really interesting. Usually these two are going along pretty strong and highly correlated in a positive way. But in our data, we start to see some, it doesn't mean that when you have high commitment within a COVID time, it translated directly to the high marital satisfaction. Is actually could go the other way around. And that's mean, you might want to commit to your relationship because being in a relationship is the only way to survive in this COVID time. Like you need to be in a home lockdown, and you might have to bear with the unhealthy relationship, but still you want to still commit to a relationship because that's the only way to cope with, it's like, collectively earn money for the family together. It's better than breaking up at this time, even though that the relationship does not go well, but, being together, collectively earn, income, it's better than being by themselves. And that's what we found so far. So it's really interesting what else we can find out. We actually have some chat going on. So I'm very interested in your study. Where can I find publication version
Well, I already responded. I sent the
sure.
link to our paper. Yeah.
Awesome. Yes. So yes, we have this paper that published together. It's a fruit out of this project. Actually, I have another question, and also the audience here. If you have any questions, please feel free to open your mic or leave it in the chat. Another question is that we actually start together this project because of the idea of intergenerational attachment, adult romantic attachment. But, as we can see, our key findings is not including that intergenerational aspect of it. So essentially, we are not successfully, find big effect in there. So any comments, Sor, on what is happening with this intergenerational question and how our marriage couple was like, it didn't translate well in our data?
Well, I mean, I think we found a weak correlation between couples' report of their parents' attachment and their own attachment. We did not put it in the slides because that's not the kind of the focus of today's discussion. But there is a weak correlation. However, when we kind of look at if you look at the full paper, we also use hierarchical regression analysis. And then when we look at hierarchical regression, that means we look at all these factors, like say couples' own attachment, anxiety, attachment avoidance, and their reported parental attachment, anxiety, and avoidance. And we can actually partial some of them out and then test another set of variables to see their effect. And when we do that, we found that the couple's report of their own attachment has a much stronger effect on their marital satisfaction. And their report of parents' attachment does not significantly help to explain the data. Like it doesn't really have a strong effect. So I think this boils down to one potential explanation is that, well, even though we learn a lot from our parents, there is still a lot we can do to help our own relationship to make it better or worse. So there's our coping style, like Jill had mentioned, our coping strategy, how we think about relationship, how we learn to communicate effectively in a relationship, and these can actually play a role. So rather than attachment and assuming that what we learn from our parents is gonna directly translate and unfiltered into our relationship, that is not really the case. Education, learning, training, and just our mental resilience, our mindfulness can also affect how we communicate to our partner. So we are not determined by how our parents interact with each other. We can learn and we can take an active part in contributing to our current relationship satisfaction. Yeah, so that's my explanation and my take on this. Any more comments, Jill?
Yeah. Oh, I just want to add to that. I think I agree with all you said. And I want to add that when we're talking about attachment framework, so like Sor said, parental or childhood attachment definitely has significant impact on how we then see other relationships. But then also from our childhood all the way to the time when we decided to marry someone, all other relationships that we have cultivated also have an effect on how we see relationships and how we see ourselves. So in every relationship we have had, and I'm not talking specifically for our samples, but if we even think about our samples, we did not ask about their past relationships, but we could assume that their even the mean age, around 40 something. So we could assume that there probably have been previous relationships that that they have had that might have an impact on how they see their current relationship. So then I think that's why it kind of speaks to also, if we want to do this or pursue this line of research, we could also ask or expand this study to be a longitudinal one, maybe adding questions around other relationships, other and coping strategies, etc., to see if how these other factors interact with how they feel about their the satisfaction of their marriage.
Very good.
And I think, Neat, I think you have another, like a kind of newest result from your students' dissertation, right?
Yeah, we just had the senior project with one of our international programs group of students, and we found that relationship perceived partner responsiveness is a very important, a very significant predictor of marital satisfaction, and this is over and above attachment anxiety and attachment avoidance. So it seems like, your current perception of your marital or your relationship status is more important than the things that you remember or you recall, like 10 or, when you were younger. I think those developmentally, experience of having your parents love or not loving each other, it could go either in the way of spillover, in the way that it translates directly, I have good parents, so in my own relationship, I would try to maintain that as what I have seen from my parents. Or it could go the other way around, by striving to be better than what I have had experience with seeing my parents, right? So it could go either way, and that is interesting if we kind of going further and looking into that. And also, like Jill just said, we have a mature couple, a mature people who are in relationship for maybe more than 5 years. So we have mature and we have experience, learn better how to cope with relationship, or how to learn to stay or to keep their marriage. And that's what I would say. So I think we are good on discussion about our marital satisfaction and attachment and things like that. Before we part here, and still, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave in the text. We will respond to that when we can. But before we part, Jill and Sor, since we are establishing very good, team on, looking into this project, and we're sure to if we have something come up with and need some more collaboration, we will probably do the same, right? We will probably leave a text and say, hey, would you like to join? And I know that Jill and Sor is working on the same project as well. So do you have any tips for the audience and for me as well to form collaboration among different culture? What is the best way to seek out and look for researchers who show the same interest or share the same idea for projects? And how did we start? How can we maintain the relationship?
Well, the first comment or first advice is don't be shy. I think a lot of the times, especially as junior researchers, we tend to be like, oh my God, these people, they are like goddess in this field. And I read so much about their paper and I feel like inadequate in reaching out. But researchers, we are all passionate about what we do. We are passionate about our research. If you think about that right now for yourself, if someone reach out to you, oh my God, your paper is so interesting, can I work with you? how would you feel? You probably would be like, oh my God, I'm so happy. Yes, please come and work with me. So no matter where their career letters are, usually, I would say this, usually researchers, they are passionate about what they do. And that's my experience when I reach out to those researchers who I respect a lot. Originally, I would feel so shy and so inadequate. I like, oh my God, I'm nobody. I'm going to reach out to people who are like big names in this field. But I always get so positive and warm responses, and a lot of sometimes like even super generous response that they are happy to share their material with me. They are happy to work with me, happy to give any advice or even guidance on how to develop as a researcher. So I would say the first thing is really don't be shy and just reach out and read the papers that is of interest to you. And if there's usually the corresponding author or the author names, and you can look them up and see if the kind of work they do is what you are interested in. Just write them an email. And people are usually very responsive and very positive. Because of this, like being shameless in reaching out to researchers, I have established, amazing research networks in Israel, in the US, and with the top people in my field. And I'm just so grateful that when you reach out to them, especially when you reach out and show that you have done your homework, when you have read their paper, you ask them informed questions, they would be more than happy to respond. So I think that is the first and foremost advice. Just don't be shy and reach out to people.
Yes, I echo that. I echo what Sora said. I have made many cold calls or cold emails, and I agree completely on we're really already at baseline, very ready to collaborate in terms of researching and working together. So yes, I echo that. And a lot of times I would tell my students too to, like places that you could potentially find collaborators would be attending conferences, right? Conferences are a really good place. I know now with COVID, it's hard to go, physically there, but at least try to check for, any conferences that you think you are interested in their scope. And try to attend as student. There's a lot of student discount, or even now with virtual conferences are very affordable, a lot of free ones. So take advantage of those, attend those, and really just reach out to the presenters, right, or guest speakers. Reach out to anyone that you feel interested in, that you find their work fascinating. And you never know what collaboration can take you to. Sometimes you have this idea, but then as we talk, as we brainstorm, there's so many different ways and branches that can take you to. So you don't need to feel intimidated that you don't have, exact same topic or something with a researcher. Just contact and start the conversation. You never know where that takes you. So, and I love growing partners in crime like Sora and Neat, so we would love to have, any of you to contact us and just grow this network with us.
Thank you, Jill, for leading me to give some some PR on our current what we are doing right now in our department. It's a TICP and TNCP 2021. So we have the Thailand International Conference on Psychology and also the national conference that they held at pretty much the same time, back to back on the 8th and the 9th of July. So if you would like to join us internationally, look for the TICP International Conference. And if you are Thai and would like to present in Thai, you can also register for the TNCP as a speaker. But for the TICP, we are having the keynote speaker from the University of Queensland, and we also have the many conference panel. I host the transition to adulthood and aging panel. So if you are having any paper that is related to developmental of adulthood and young adult and emerging adult, please also feel free to contact me, and also please also look through our international conference page. But adding from Jill and Soar, usually researchers are very, very nice. They are nice to people who reach out to them. So, and if you are a student who are looking forward to apply for the graduate school for the PhD program, I think Soar and Jill's recommendation is also apply for the same thing. Like, if you like to work with some faculty member in a certain university, be sure to read their work and reach out to them to see whether they are opening for graduate students. Sometimes it's when you apply for grad school, it doesn't mean that you are not good enough to get accepted, but maybe because at that time, the one that you would like to work with, it's not opening for new researcher or new advisees. So, be sure to, if you really, really want to work on a certain topic and you know that this particular faculty member is very good to collaborate with or to work with for your grad school, just be sure to reach out to them and say, show some interest, and then, send them a shout out. And then you might get added into the grad school very easily because, they have conversation with you before. So are we having Ravita, are we having the form that we need to ask our audience to fill satisfaction evaluation for this talk? Are we have one or we not? เราต้องมีกรอกฟอร์มมีลิงก์อะไรไหมคะ I'm not sure. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. I hope you have learned some of you might probably have look into the studies of attachment and adult romantic relationship already. So what we have provided you today is our insight gained from our Taiwanese and Thai data. So hope you enjoy our discussion today. And, if you have any further question, please feel free to contact us. We are very welcoming for more questions or comments, or even for a future collaboration. Jill and Soar, would you like to greet everyone? And Jill have left her emails in the chat. So if you would like to further making contact, please do so. So before we, would you like to say anything before we part here?
Well, I would really like to say thank you, Neat, for organizing this, and thank you, Chulalongkorn University, for giving us this wonderful opportunity to grow our international network. And I am also taking on the role of international lead in my school of psychology. So be sure to keep your antenna open, and I would really like to grow our international network and organizing events like this in the UK as well. So yeah, I also pop my email there for you to contact me if you have any further questions or if you just want to work with me in the future. So thank you everyone in the audience as well. I really enjoy this opportunity to share with you our work. Thank you.
Same here. Thank you, everyone. It was so fun. Thank you, Neet. Thank you, Chula. Thank you, Sor. And yeah, so just to add a bit about my work at Fulbright, because I'm seeing some students here. My student is here. So we are developing, or we have a small but growing research lab in psychology, and we're always looking for collaboration. So our themes are around cross-cultural, for sure. That's a theme, cross-cultural psychology. And right now we want to focus also on relationship, but we are open to other topics as well. So hope to hear from some of you, and thank you for spending time with us.
All right, so I think it's we keeping up with time pretty well. So an hour and a half, which is good for this online. I know that everyone would probably be very fed up with Zoom meetings or any other platform of meetings that you have online. So hope everyone is staying healthy and hope the situation for all of us wherever we are in the world is being good, and then we eventually gonna opening up our countries again, and then we get to see each other face to face again. So we hope for the best. Okay, so thank you very much everyone for being here. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.